Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenching. My name's Ben, and today I'm wrenching on this 2002 Ford Ranger XLT. It's got a coolant leak, and I'm pretty sure it's coming from the thermostat housing gasket. So I got a new thermostat housing that came with the gasket. I'm gonna go ahead and replace the thermostat, and hopefully fix this coolant leak for like 12 bucks. So I'll pop the hood and show you what the coolant leak looks like. The hood release is way down here on this one. And the thermostat housing is right here on the upper radiator hose, right about in the center of the engine. I can see one bolt right there, and there's another bolt on the opposite side. So hopefully I can get that out without taking the air box out. There is the other bolt on the other side. And all around that connection, there is coolant. So I can see some over there. I can see some on the other side over there. And there's even some down here. So I'm pretty confident that the leak is coming from that housing. It's just got a gasket where the housing mates to the top of the engine. So that gasket is likely failing. I went ahead and got a Dorman housing that came with a new gasket. You can get just the gasket, but for 12 bucks, I think this is the right way to go. And while I'm in there, I'm going to replace the thermostat. I wanted to get a name brand thermostat because I've gotten junk ones from Amazon before, but AutoZone didn't have a Delco, so I went with the Duralast Gold. I will link an AC Delco thermostat in the description. The only reason I didn't get that off Amazon was because it was going to take a week to get here. But with thermostats, I like to go name brand because I've been burned before by cheap junk. It's a cheap part, and if you're going to be in there, you might as well change the thermostat too while you're in there. So I need to drain a little bit of the coolant so that the level is below that thermostat housing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I'll just take off this radiator cap. You want to make sure the engine's cool before you take this off. But now that I've got that off, there's a Petcock on the bottom of the radiator. Down here on the passenger side, underneath the truck, right at the front, this is the radiator. On this side, it's got the lower radiator hose going into it, and there is a spout right here. This is where the coolant's going to come out when I release this Petcock. This white plastic piece has a hex on it, so I'm just going to put a socket here, open this up, and the coolant will come out right here. It's a 3/4 inch. So I just need to get a 3/4 inch wrench or socket and loosen this up. So I'll try a short 3/4 inch socket. I'll make sure I got my catch pan in place and loosen this up until coolant starts coming out. So I'll just drain a little bit of this, just enough to get the level below the thermostat housing. And I can shine my flashlight down in here and see where the level is at. And once the level here looks like it matches something that is approximately below where that thermostat housing is, then I know I can stop, and I've probably got the level below that thermostat housing. And when I take that off, I shouldn't have coolant going everywhere. So you can drain as much as you want until you feel confident that you've got that level where you want it. I know this is new coolant because my buddy's had to fill his radiator as it leaks out. So I cleaned out my catch pan in case I need to reuse this coolant, but I'd always suggest putting in new coolant anyway. So I may just do that. And I'll open this up a little bit more just to speed up this process. And I think that's probably pretty good, so I'll go ahead and close this back up. And I can't even really see the top of the coolant level, so I know it's at least probably halfway down on this radiator, which is good enough to say it's probably below this level. Once I've got enough coolant drained out, I can go ahead and get these two bolts off of the thermostat housing. First one's right here. It's pretty easy to see. It'd be easier to see if the airbox wasn't in my way. But I've got this set of tiny wrenches. I'm going to use the 10mm to get at that bolt. And I will link these wrenches in the description. These come in pretty handy when you need them. So I like having this set. So I'll just break this one loose. And it's really on there. So I'll see if I can use a longer wrench to break it free. And I'm just rounding off that bolt. So I'm going to hit it with some PB Blaster. So it helped to heat this up so I could start the engine and get this bolt hot. But I'll try this and let it sit for a while. In the meantime, I can work on this back bolt. For this one, I'm going to use a 10mm socket on an extension. And I can get right down in here on it. I'm going to try to tighten it just a little bit and then loosen it again. And then tighten it again. And then loosen it again. Oh, there we go. All right, so there's one. I'm going to go ahead and take off this airbox cover. All I need to do is get this bolt out and then take this hose clamp off. It's an 8mm screw, and that one turns easy. This one's 8mm as well, and that one turns real easy too. So I'll take this all the way out. I'll pull this hose off. Helps to turn it a little bit and crack it loose. I can use the most useless tool in the world to try to get this vacuum line out of here. And that way I don't damage that line while I pull this off. Make sure there's nothing else connected. Loosen this up a bit more. Just take this hose off. And then I can get this whole cover out of here. and that gives me a lot better access to that front bolt. So that's going to be a lot easier than a tiny wrench. So I'll tighten it a little bit and then loosen it back up and then tighten it again. And that's just going to help break up some of that rust. Oh, there we go. Wow, I can't believe I didn't break either of those bolts because those really snapped when I got them loose. But now I can turn them by hand. And there's one. And there is the other. And you can see just how much coolant is down there. It's kind of all over the place. So that's a good indication that this is where the coolant leak is coming from. And now I can break the seal on this housing. And you can see that my coolant line was just at the top of that. So that's pretty awesome. There is the thermostat. I'll have to clean up this gasket area right here and figure out a way to do that without getting a bunch of gasket material in the coolant. So I put the thermostat back in there so I can clean up this area around it without dumping all that material down into the coolant. I always start with a plastic razor blade to see if I can scrape a bunch of that off. This is not going to damage this surface. And this gasket's actually coming up real easy. So I'll start with a plastic razor blade. I may have to finish up with a metal one to clean up any extra bits, but I'm going to clean all of this gasket material off without dropping as much as I possibly can down in the coolant. Alright, so a quick update. I stuffed a towel down in there so I didn't get gasket material in the hole. I found that I have to use metal razor blades. That plastic one wasn't doing anything. And I'm on my third metal razor blade now, and I'm about halfway done. There's still kind of the worst of it to get out. It's not too bad, and I really didn't drop anything down in there, but at this point, I got to get the rest of this off, so I'm having to go at it pretty hard, and so that's why I put the towel down in there. I wouldn't worry too much about how much you're getting in there because I haven't gotten basically anything inside there, and most of it will float at the top, and you can just dip your finger in there and get it out. And if you're like me, you'll tell yourself I did the best I can. I didn't get much material in there. And you can always drain the rest of the coolant out and put new coolant in if you're worried about how much gasket material got down in there. So I'm going to keep going at it and get the rest of this off, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. All right, and I really think that's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I'll use a paper towel to soak up any of the bits that are on top of the coolant level. And there's really not too much, so I think I did okay. You can see some bits down in there. I'm gonna try to fish those out. I'll go ahead and dry this surface off. And before I put my new gasket on, I'm gonna put some gasket sealer that I got at AutoZone. This should help with any imperfections in the surface so that the gasket can mate up nice and flush. And I'll just put a thin coat all the way around. I'll put my new thermostat in, center it as best I can. I'll put some gasket sealer on my thermostat housing. I'll spread this around the best I can, and hopefully between scraping the surface, using this gasket sealer and a new gasket, I'll have a watertight seal and no leaks. So I just need to take the old housing off of this upper hose. I'll put the new housing in about the same orientation and then tighten this back down. Fish it through this vacuum line. I'll loosen this back up a little bit so I can try to turn it just to get the bolt holes lined up. And once I've got that where I want it, I can tighten this hose clamp back up. I can always tighten this down all the way later. I'm just trying to hurry a little bit so that my gasket sealer doesn't cure. I'll slide the gasket in here, line up the bolt holes. I'll get the front bolt started, get the gasket lined up for the back bolt, slide it through the gasket and get it started, and tighten both bolts down. All right, and I'll leave those snugged and let that gasket sealer cure. I can wipe off some of this extra gasket sealer that's coming through. That's good. Hopefully that means that we got a really good seal on that. And then these bolts get torqued down to 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to tighten down this hose clamp one more time just to make sure it's tight. I think that's probably good. I'll wipe off the rest of this gasket sealer that oozed out when I torqued the bolts down. And everything down here looks pretty good. So I forgot to mention, because I was in a bit of a hurry, but you always want to put the thermostat with the cone shape up and the spring side down towards the engine. In most cars, it matters where you put this. This little knob here needs to go up if the thermostat is going in sideways. But with it going straight up and down like this, it doesn't matter which way it's turned. All right, so I can go ahead and reconnect this vacuum line. I'll get this cover back on. I'll go ahead and slide the hose back on and then get this screw in here. Tighten this back down. I'll tighten this hose clamp back down as well. And I'll double check and make sure that this is flush up against this plastic cover all the way around. Cover feels good. The hose feels good. All right, now everything's back where it's supposed to be. I just need to fill the coolant. I'm gonna fill it up to the top here at the radiator cap, put some in the coolant overflow reservoir, and then I'll run the truck, let it get up to operating temperature, and make sure that the coolant is still full once the thermostat opens up and frees up some of that coolant. I'm squeezing the upper radiator hose to try to push out some of the air that's in the system. You can see bubbles coming out right there. So I'll just keep squeezing air out and filling more coolant in as it needs it. And that looks good. When I squeeze the hose, there's no more air bubbles coming out. It's just the coolant level moving up and down. So that's good. It looks full. I'm gonna go ahead and close it up. And then I just want them to check and make sure that there's no coolant leaking out of that gasket area. And all that looks dry, so I think we're good. And if you're not going to reuse your coolant like me, just pour it into a bottle and you can take it to an auto parts store and they'll get rid of it for you. Just make sure you mark this that it's old coolant, that way you don't mix it up with your new coolant. I always write an X on top with the China marker. And as one last extra step, I'm going to spray some green cleaner down where all that old coolant was. And then I'll use the steamer to spray in that whole area, clean up that coolant. I'll blow it out with some compressed air, dry it all off, and then that way I can see if any coolant is leaking after the fix. And then I'll just wipe everything down to get all the dirt off, especially right here. I got a lot of dirt on this intake when I blew it off. And I'll try to get down in here and soak up as much of that moisture as I can. And I'll dry it off one more time with the compressed air. And it doesn't look perfect, but that's way better. So I'll blow down in here with compressed air one more time and just make sure that this area is dry. And down here I can see that there's no standing coolant. And especially down here, there's no puddled up coolant anymore. So I'll be able to tell if it's leaking again. I did put some more coolant in the overflow tank, so at this point I'm done. I'm ready to drive the truck and make sure that there are no leaks coming from the thermostat housing once the engine gets to operating temperature. But other than that, mission accomplished. I've got a bit of a mess to clean up. As always, I will link everything that I used in the description, but that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Subscribe if you want to see more content on this 02 Ford Ranger, and I will catch you guys in the next video.